Hello, my friends, and welcome to Soulcial Scoop podcast. We teach entrepreneurial creators to turn their online influence into a profitable, self-sustaining business. Every Tuesday, you can catch the weekly news and an interview with an industry expert. And every Thursday, you get to be a fly on the wall during a personalized coaching call with one of our members. My name is Kristen Busquet, and as always, I'm so excited that you're here. Today, I am here with Megan Crawshaw, a home decor, DIY, and lifestyle creator who also happens to be a member of the Soulcial Suite and a creator that I've been personally working with since 2021. If you're interested in getting your free one-on-one podcast coaching call, you can become a member of our private membership community, the Soulcial Suite. Without further ado, let's dive into it. Megan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course. So yeah, we've been working together for a really long time. I obviously know you very well, but for anyone listening who does not know you yet, just give us a little bit of an inside scoop on who you are.
Yeah, so full-time, I'm a high school counselor in Florida. And then part-time, I do content creation on Instagram mainly and a little bit of TikTok.
I love it. Yeah, I feel like you have such a very specific type of content. Like when I go to your page, I'm like, oh, that's Megan's. Like, I don't know. I like relate it to you so easily. Like you have a very like boho kind of vibe with, I feel like everything that you do.
Yes, that's definitely the goal.
Well, it's working. So, there were a few questions that you had wanted to go over, and we'll kind of jump around and go through them. I'll have some questions for you throughout as well, but we'll try and get you to a place where at the end of this call, you just are feeling a little bit better about everything, feeling a little bit more like prepared and have some actionable steps to actually like dive into these struggles that I'll tell you, you're definitely not the only one going through. So let's first start off. You had said your engagement rate was going down quite a bit, possibly because of your decrease in frequency of posting, and you were looking to kind of get that back up. So give me like a little bit more information there. How's everything been going with you in terms of frequency and engagement rate?
So when it's the summertime, I feel like I'm posting a lot more just because I'm off of work. But then when I get into the fall and the spring, I'm posting significantly less and I'm making a lot less content. I have seen my engagement rate go down. I feel like I was hovering right around 3% over the summer. And now I feel like it's definitely gone down. So I'm just like interested in getting that up. Also, I feel like my engagement in general is a lot lower than it was over the summer. Like I feel like people aren't liking or commenting on my stuff as frequently.
Yeah, engagement, I feel like is something that everyone that I talk to ever is always like struggling with. It's hard to keep it where we want it. And I think with the introduction of Reels, it's been even more difficult because like I think about the way that people use their phones now versus like before TikTok existed. Like you used to actually stop and like read things, comment, like all of the things. But now with TikTok, like I'm so used to watching a video and just scrolling that like even if I like the video, I probably like don't like it. Like I'm not actually physically liking it. So I honestly think that TikTok has had like a huge impact on the way that anyone engages on any platform. And I think that's a huge reason as to why we're all seeing engagement rate a lot lower. And something else too, and I know these are like not really great actionable items, but just stuff to think about. Another thing too is I just feel like a lot of people, especially on Instagram, are like burnt out of the whole like liking, commenting. Like we're just tired, like even think about yourself. Like do you take right now, are you taking as much time to like and comment on things as you used to?
No,
right?
Not even close. Yeah.
Not even close. Same. Like sometimes I feel like I post something, I'll like stick around. I watch stories a lot, but then I'm like, ow, I can't even really remember the last time I took a lot of time to scroll through my feed.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I think, again, like the way that we're using the app is just so different, but that's a huge factor as to why engagement could be so much lower because, like, we're not the only two people feeling that. Like, so many other people are just, like, not interacting the way that they used to. So I almost am kind of thinking of, like, I guess the end of 2022 into 2023, like we're almost in this like new normal of what engagement looks like. And again, like it's not just us. This is what I've seen across the board. Everyone has been saying the same thing. Unless you have a reel that like pops off, if it's getting a ton more reach, of course it's going to get more likes and more comments. And of course that will help boost your engagement rate. But for, the majority of people who don't have things going viral all the time, this is almost just like a new normal of what engagement
Mhm.
looks like.
Yeah.
Um, One thing too that I think is important to realize, because I know for me, when I'm thinking about engagement, obviously there's part of engagement that I'm like, well, I want my engagement to be a certain way, but it's mostly because like I don't want brands to think that like no one cares about my content, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yep,
the most important
exactly.
part. And I think that it's important to know a lot of the brands that I've had conversations with are fully aware that like this is happening for everyone, like
Mhm.
I think their standards are a little bit lower than what they used to be as well, for at least with brands that I've had conversations with.
Okay.
So overall, first thing to know is that like yes, it's happening to everyone. The way that we're using our phones is different. Like there's a lot of external factors like that I think are super important to consider, because it's hard for you probably to like look through this checklist of like, okay, this is what my post needs to happen. Like, this is when I need to post it. I need to have my call to action, da, 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 like all of these things. And you check all of the
Mhm.
boxes and you're still like, why is it not giving me the result that
Yes.
I want? Um, think about those external things as well, And
Yeah.
another thing too, like a lot of people are in the same situation as you, where like maybe they're, especially like if you have people who follow you that are in school, like college
Mhm.
students or whatever. Summer, they have all the time in the world. Fall, like, okay, we have things going on now.
Mhm.
So like that's another thing too. Also with COVID, like starting in, the fall, a lot of companies went back into the actual office. So like,
Mhm.
like less
Yes,
people
that's
sitting on
true.
their phones all day. All these
Yeah.
external factors are very important. But I don't think it's fair to like solely blame it on the external factors. Like obviously it's important for you to like take a hard look at what you're doing and really ask yourself, like, is there anything else that I can do here? So one thing that I've noticed recently with content is like the typical call to actions that we used to use, in 2021 and 2020, maybe just don't really work very well anymore. So, like, maybe back in those years, we might have put a call to action that was like, comment your favorite, whatever, or like, do you like this? Leave this emoji if you're going to try it. Like, they were a little bit more like, I don't know if corny is the right word,
Yeah, yeah.
but, like, very, like, surface level, like, "Do
Yeah.
this if you want this." I think now it's, like, gotta be a little bit deeper of a
Mhm.
call to action. Like, find ways to get people engaged that are more than just like solely to leave a comment, like ask questions, spark conversation. Even when you're getting comments in the responses, like getting comments, when you go to respond to them, like how can you further the conversation there? Like if
Mhm.
someone says, oh, I love the way you redid your kitchen, and you comment back and just say thank you, like that ends the conversation right there. Are there any ways that you can be like, "Oh, thanks," like, "Did you see this one? Da, 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 da," like, or whatever else, like,
Yeah,
maybe you
yeah,
refer to something else, or because all of those count as comments too, like, even if you're commenting. And that's
yeah,
gonna help
right.
boost the rate too.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people do is just and I do it myself all the time too. I'm just like, "Thank you." On to the next one. "Thank you." Like, and you're kinda just responding to respond, but, like, find ways to spark conversation there. Also, this one, like, there's a way to do it right and a way to, like, be scammy about it, but, like, sparking conversation, like, are there ways is there anything, like, controversial that you do? Like, when you're, do you, like, not mix your paint before you paint with it? Or, like, like,
Yeah.
things that,
Yes.
like, everyone else does that, like, maybe are a little different the way that you do them. Those are
Mhm.
things that are really cool to point out, and, like, again, maybe putting in the comments, like, "Do you do it this way?" Or, like, "Am I the only one?" Those are great ways to spark conversation. So, think about, like, deeper ways to have call to actions. I think that's gonna make a big difference.
Okay, I think that sounds great. I like that idea.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the other part of it too, and I'm sure you're doing this, but again, I think the way that all of us creators are doing this is very different. spending time building relationships with your audience. Okay, so I'm reading this book right now. I literally am going to recommend it to every single person I talk to because it's so like it's insanely good for content creators. It's called Superfans.
Hmm.
It's like a business book, and it's by this guy Pat Flynn, who's just like genius online business guy, and it's all about building connections with your audience and turning them into like super fans so that they do all of the work of like telling people about you and your page and your products and whatever. um and the stuff he talks about is just so obvious, but it's stuff that you're just like, wow, why don't I do that? Why don't I think
Hmm.
about that? So
Yeah.
first of all, book recommendations. And I think like reading that book and like listening to the things that he talks about will help you with this like building of your audience, building of relationships with your audience. One thing that he talks about a lot is like when you are, sending out a newsletter or something, or like even writing a caption, like writing it in a way that's like less about educating and less about sales and more about you like talking to a friend, you know?
Hmm.
And again, this is something so obvious and we all talk about it like, yeah, like talk like you're talking to a friend. But when you really like look at the way you write your captions, are you really writing them that way? Um, like one thing that he talks about is like when you're writing a newsletter, and I just changed the way that I started doing this because it made so much sense. Like basically in my newsletters, I write, here's the new podcast episode. This is what it's all about. Da da da. And like I might tell a little bit of a personal story in there, but I never really get outside of business. Like
Hmm.
whereas maybe do you ever like get outside of like DIY and home decor to like talk about something in your personal life and maybe relate it back to the topic, like that you can relate it to what you're posting about. But like for example, I just sent out a newsletter that had a picture of like our new foster dog in it because I'm like, no one, unless they follow me on Instagram and watch my stories, like no one knows about these things. But these are all things that people can find ways to relate to us through.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
that's what it's really about is like, how can you find ways to relate to people, maybe even outside of home decor and outside of lifestyle? Like maybe you're talking about how you're having a really hard time getting through this DIY project because you're so busy with X, Y, and Z, like, or,
Hmm.
all of these crazy things like, oh, me and my husband just got in a fight about this. And now I haven't had time to get to my DIY project. And like, it might be something that people can like relate to on a more human level versus just like the level of like, what is your niche and what are you talking about? So those are things I've been kind of trying to think about with building relationships with my audience. Like, how do you build like actual better human connection versus just
Hmm.
like businessy, like what
Yeah.
is my niche? Let me just talk to them about my niche. Do you feel like you spend a lot of time like talking about stuff that's outside of your niche and like, bringing it all together a little bit?
I don't think I spend as much time as I could be, for sure. Like I said, I'm not posting as frequently as I was before, but
Yeah.
I think that that's definitely something that I could start to implement more, for sure.
Yeah, and it almost makes the job like a little bit easier too because you
Hmm.
can kind of just like again talk like you're talking to a friend. Like if you were to text a friend about this new project you're working on, like what would the text message look like? And I think that's like kind of
Yeah.
a cool way to look at it. Um and also the other thing too that you brought up was like post frequency. So like you haven't
Hmm.
had a lot of time to post and so, obviously that's impacted your numbers.
Hmm.
First things first, I feel like it's important to know you don't have to post a lot, like
Yeah.
don't feel the pressure to like, oh my God, like I have to start posting more. What am I gonna do? Like people aren't gonna, I'm gonna become irrelevant. No one's gonna like listen to me anymore. But at the end of the day, like you have to do what's sustainable for you. And if there
Hmm.
are certain times a year where it's easier than others, like that's fine. People we're still gonna see your content. You still come up on my stories all the time. Like, I still see
Yeah.
your content, even if you're not posting, super frequently. So I guess my question would be, what does your frequency look like in the summer versus your frequency now? Like how often per week or per month do you feel like you're posting?
I would say, like, in the summer, I feel like I'm posting at least once a week, if not a little bit more. And then
Mhm.
lately, I feel like I've been posting maybe like once a month. Like, I feel
Okay.
like it's very limited, with
Yeah.
the school year that started, and then we got married, and then our honeymoon,
Right.
and just I feel like I'm posting like once a month right now.
Yeah. But also, like, those are huge moments in your life. You know,
Mhm.
you're getting married, you're planning your wedding, you're going on your honeymoon. Like, honestly, who cares about social media during those times? Like, if you need to take time off, I did the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
that's fine. Like, you're gonna get back to it and be fine. I would say, like, maybe it might be interesting for you to find ways that are sustainable for you to like create more frequently, but that aren't like I know for you as someone who does DIYs and home decor, like
Mhm.
home projects, it might feel like to create one video, you have to do like this massive project or like
Mhm.
redo a room or like create this new whatever. Like, and obviously that's very time consuming to actually do what you're teaching, but then also to make the video and post it and all of that. Like, that's a lot. That's
Yeah.
a lot. It makes sense that you wouldn't be able to do a ton of that. But like, are there things that you can create that are gonna take 5 minutes worth of filming, you know, like,
Mhm.
even if it's trends, like, are there trends that you might come across, or even in the membership, like, we have the weekly trending sounds, you know, you
Mhm.
could go to that once a week, find one of those trending sounds and say, "How can I relate this back to, you know, what I talk about in my audience?" Or, you know, even getting on once a week and, like, just sharing a photo of whatever it is, take a quick picture around your house or a selfie or
Mhm.
whatever it is, but like maybe even using that as kind of like a little journal entry on like, this is what's going on in my week. Like, this is how I've been feeling. This is what's going on with all my home projects. Like, keeping your audience updated and in the loop, let them
Mhm.
know that, like, "Hey, I'm still here. I'm still, like, thinking about you guys." But also that might be a really good relatable way to, like, build the relationship with your audience. Like, you know, "Guys, I'm going doing all of these things. I have all of these things going on, so that's why I haven't been able to, like, do all of the things
Mhm.
that I wanna do. Like, does this ever happen to you? Like, is this just adulting?" Like, those are all things that, you know, like, it doesn't have to be, like, this big crazy production of
Yeah.
content that you're creating. Like, maybe, again, using it almost as, like, a journal entry once a week could be, like, a actually really, like, therapeutic way, but also to, like, get content out at the same time.
I like that. I think that we could definitely make that happen. And it seems like it would be a more relaxed way to approach
Yes.
content creation, which I think is what I want and need right now. So,
Exactly. Yeah, it has to be sustainable. At the end of the
yeah.
day, like, you're not gonna keep up with it, and you're not gonna stay consistent if it feels like it's very overwhelming, and it feels like a
Mhm.
chore, and it feels like this big thing that, like, "Oh, I have to do this, but I have no ideas," and, like, you know, it's, like, exhausting. It's, you know,
Yeah.
it's very overwhelming, and that's something that I talk with creators about all the time, so you're definitely not alone in that, but I would find ways to, set an alarm for every, you know, Friday at 7 p.m. Like, and you're gonna
Mhm.
write your post for the week. And whenever you decide to post it that weekend, post it on Monday, post it that day, doesn't matter, whatever.
Mhm.
But at least you have it written.
Yeah.
And then you could also, again, like maybe you throw one video up there with like one of the trending sounds or but again, I would just try and take the pressure off of it. The thing is, like,
Mhm.
not every post is gonna be your best post in terms of engagement, reach, quality, like that's just the way it is. But like I think having something out there is better than nothing. You know, again,
Yeah.
it helps you helps people stay in the loop with you, not only keeps your numbers up a little bit more, but also again, just like lets people build relationships with you. Cause that's what, when you leave, it's not that the algorithm is punishing you for taking a break. It's that your
Mhm.
audience has disconnected with you because they haven't talked to you. They don't know what's going on. Like, you know, you haven't updated them. You haven't told them, like, hi, I exist still. Like,
Right.
so I think keeping that relationship with them could be really helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
So I mean, you also wanted to talk about like consistency. I feel like we did
Mhm.
kind of touch on that a little bit. But I have just kind of like a couple bullet points too that might be helpful. Whenever I think about consistency, I always think about the fact that like I can't give you a plan that's just gonna like you're just gonna do it and it's gonna work because finding a streamlined process that works for you is gonna be straight up trial and error. You know, like
Yeah.
because what works for me may not work for you, may not work for the next person. So again, finding you have to take the time to experiment in order to figure out like, okay, I can do this. Again, like setting your alarm every Friday at 7 p.m. for your little journal
Mhm.
entry post. like that's a great way to get started into being consistent.
Mhm.
It's just about you trying things out. Maybe you try it out and you're like, okay, Friday at 7 p.m. I'm like ready to like clock out, go to dinner, read my book for the night, whatever it is. So like maybe you
Mhm.
do it on Mondays at 6 a.m. before you go to work. I don't
Mhm.
know, whatever.
Yeah.
So you do these trial and error kind of things to figure out what works for you. But then once you figure that out, you're like, okay, cool, I've got that down. What else can I try? And you
Mhm.
keep going through these different things of trial and error. But I feel like there's literally no good way to tell you. Like you just have to go
Yeah.
through the ringer and try and figure out like what really works for you. So what are the things that you struggle with getting done most right now?
I think it's actually like the DIY process is like the main thing. We
Yeah.
also are in a rental now compared to
Mm,
previously when we owned. So I feel like our DIYs are significantly more limited,
yeah.
but I still have ideas. I just need to like commit to them, like
Yeah.
I just need to like actually do them. And I mean, taking the angle of like rental friendly DIYs is like another thing that I've considered. I think it's
100%.
just coming up with the ideas and executing them that I'm like slow on right now.
Do you feel like when you have an idea for a project, is it if you were to execute on that project, never mind social media, but just like
Hmm.
actually do the project, do you does it feel therapeutic to you? Is that like you clocking out and being like, "Ooh, I get to do a DIY project," or are you like, "Oh, I have this project, but like it's going to be so much work and like I'm tired, I kind of want to just relax." Like, how do you feel about them?
The project itself is therapeutic and I love that. But the portion of like having to stop and like film or like stop and like make sure I take a photo of something, like that part kind of stresses me out a little bit. I think
Yeah.
I'm still working out the kinks with like finding a groove that works for me with
Yeah.
creating projects and creating content simultaneously.
Okay. So, I
Hmm.
mean, that's at least you have that because I think for
Hmm.
people who they know they love home decor, but they also would like to relax on the weekend and not like wallpaper their whole bedroom or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's a problem because obviously that's a little bit harder to that feels like work, At
Yeah.
least this is a little therapeutic for you. So I think if I were you in your situation, what I would do that I think would be really helpful is like when you think of your project, okay, you've got the whole project outline of what you want to do. Maybe
Hmm.
like sit down and for each thing that you like, each step, like write a little bullet point of exactly what you want to get on video or exactly what you want to
Hmm.
get for photo. And then at least you can kind of say like, okay, I'm on step 3. Here's the one little video clip that I need to get, and then you don't have to think about it. Cause I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's what happens. You're like, oh, well, should I get this? But then if I don't get that, then I won't have this part of the video. Like, and you start like thinking about it way too hard. That
Hmm.
for me is very stressful. So I would literally like write out scene by scene of like what this video is going to look like and just relate one scene to each step, and then
Yeah.
you literally just have to like execute on it, no thought involved. That might be
Love
really
that.
helpful.
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds like way easier.
Yeah, that's what I started doing for a lot of my sponsored work because I was like, "Oh no, like what if I miss one thing that's like super important?" And so I just started writing out scene by scene exactly what it was and then it's so easy. You're just going through a checklist, You're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, got that one. Sweet, we're on to step 2." Like go on there and it becomes, like just like going through a checklist. That
Yeah.
should definitely be helpful.
I like that.
So you also wanted to chat today about your rates. So basically, I guess my first question would be for Instagram and for TikTok, what are you currently charging?
So for excuse me, for TikTok, I recently charged 350,
Okay.
$350 just for a
What is
video.
your follower count?
I think it's let me check. My follower count on TikTok is 3,512.
Okay. And what is your typical like videos see? Like what's like the typical range in terms of views?
Oh, sorry. Um,
Every time you open the app, it's like something.
I know it's like yelling at me. um, I would say that I don't get. Sorry, my throat is killing me.
Oh gosh.
I would say recently, I'm not getting over 1,000 views on anything. I would
Okay.
say I'm hovering like right around 400 on
Okay.
average, maybe.
That's honestly
So,
like that's really not bad for your follower count. Like that's
mhm,
really not bad. And you said you're charging 350?
yeah, for
Okay.
TikTok,
I
yeah.
and do you feel like you have brands at this point that are agreeing to the 350?
So I've had one brand reach out specifically for a TikTok video, and that
Yep.
was like the price I gave them, and they were like, "Great, perfect."
Were there any usage rights included?
No, there were not. They
Okay.
said if they wanted to add that in, then they would like reach out to me and let me know, and they agreed with the $100 per month or
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So that's actually really great. Like I think 350 is actually on the higher end than
Hmm.
again at your follower count with your video views. I think that's actually a little bit higher than I would probably recommend charging. So if you can have a brand agree to that,
Hmm.
great. Like that's your starting rate. Perfect. So I
Okay.
would say keep the 350 and again, you may have to negotiate down, which I don't think would be the craziest thing. Again, I feel like somewhere between like 200 to 250 is probably what I
Hmm.
would expect. The thing about TikTok, and you had asked, like, should you be charging the same on Instagram as same on TikTok in terms of like with follower count? And
Yeah.
the way that I look at it, an Instagram follower holds a lot more weight than a TikTok follower does because,
Hmm.
like typically if you follow someone on Instagram, like you're making like a very important decision to like,
Yeah.
let them be someone that you follow. I feel like it takes a lot more thought to follow someone on TikTok than it or on Instagram than it does on TikTok. Whereas on TikTok, we're like, we'll just follow anyone and anything. I don't care what it
Yeah.
is. If it made
Right.
me laugh once, perfect, follow.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit easier to build a following on TikTok typically than it is on
Hmm.
Instagram. So I don't think that the follower count and rate would be like very much aligned with each other. But I would say if you can get 350 for a TikTok video, great. Again,
Okay.
you may have to come down and negotiate somewhere 200, 250 without usage rights. And I think that would be equally as fine. But
Hmm.
yeah, start at 350. I think that's great. How about for Instagram?
So for Instagram, I feel like it varies.
Okay.
I Let me see what I charged recently
Hmm.
for. I think I'm charging around 400 to 500, depending. Um, I don't know. It varies. I feel like I'm
Okay.
changing my
I
number
know.
every time I pitch. Like I'm
That's
not
not
consistent.
uncommon. What is your current follower count there?
That one is. Let me see that one. I am at 5,624.
Okay. And then your engagement rate is probably maybe around like a 2.
Yes. Yeah, I would say
2%?
so.
Okay.
Hmm.
I know you had said it gone down a little bit from the 3. So if we assume it's somewhere around there, I would say maybe for an Instagram post, like a post versus a reel. I think a post you
Hmm.
could probably do like maybe like 400 and
Hmm.
then maybe a reel you do like 450 or 500. Again, no usage rights. And this would be like bare minimum,
Hmm.
super easy, not something you're doing like a big giant DIY project for. Like those kind of things. And that's why I think your rate is going to vary so much. But I would
Hmm.
say like absolute bare minimum that I would accept would probably be around $400. Um and again, that would be super super simple. That would be like, I'm going to like have your dishwasher soap in my kitchen photo that
Yeah.
I'm taking.
Yeah.
Like, like nothing crazy. But again, as soon as you start having brands asking you to like, do something where you do have to put a lot more time into it, or like it's going to be a really complicated video to edit, or they
Hmm.
have, like a lot of very specific requirements for that video. Anytime you feel like, oh my God, this is a big project, I'm a little overwhelmed by like what's on this brief, I
Hmm.
would bump up the rate.
Okay.
So again, I mean, Instagram, you have a little bit more following there, but we're
Hmm.
still charging a little bit more there. Again, from like what I would typically start
Hmm.
you at. I mean, how do you feel about those rates? Do you feel like they're like comfortable for you?
Yeah, I think that they're definitely comfortable. I mean,
Okay.
like you said, I feel like it's higher than what I would accept typically. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we also too, if you ever need to kind of like look back at this when, follower count changes or engagement rate changes or
Hmm.
whatever it is, we have that creator rate guide that's
Hmm.
in the resources tab in Soulcial Suite as well. So that's a great resource to kind of check back on. Typically what I recommend is like looking at that rate. It goes by follower count, will tell you if you have this many followers, this is how much I would typically start at. But
Hmm.
again, there are other things that you want to think about. So, like, if your engagement rate, started to get back where you wanted it to, and it was over 3%, and it was just like a great high engagement rate, that's something you could, add $50, $100 onto that
Hmm.
rate for.
Okay.
Or again, like the ask of what the brand is asking you, obviously, any exclusivity, usage, any of those kind of things, we're raising the rate for.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, very much bare minimum, the numbers that we went over today, but it's so normal that it's going to change with literally every collaboration that you're
Yeah.
going to do.
Yeah. That's how it feels.
Yeah, that's not abnormal. Typically what I'll do if the brand will, if they give me like, "Oh, these are the deliverables. It's one reel, one story, one TikTok video." Okay, like that's great and everything, but what is this video about? Like I'll ask more information and even ask if they can send me the brief before
Hmm.
I sign a contract because that's a great way to see again like what are they going to be really requiring of me in this video
Hmm.
because it sucks if you agree to that bare minimum of $400 and then you get the brief and it's like this massive project and you're like, damn it, that's
Yeah.
not what I was expecting here.
Yeah.
And then you end up in a situation that is very frustrating. So that's something to think about too. Ask for the brief before you sign a contract. There's really nothing wrong with that. If they don't have a brief ready yet, I would
Hmm.
just ask like, what are the expectation for this video? What are you guys expecting? What are, like the key points that you want me to cover in this video?
Hmm. Okay.
Sweet. Are you feeling like a little bit more like ready, a little bit more comfortable?
Yes, I would definitely say compared to the beginning of the call to now, I'm feeling a little bit better.
Okay, good. Like, if it makes you feel any better, everything that we went over today is something that I literally talk with people about every single day. These are huge problems that every creator has with consistency and engagement and rates. Like, they're difficult things to figure out. And unfortunately, they're things that change very frequently. So it just sometimes when you figure them out, they change again and you have to
Mhm.
like figure out how to, like you're always having to pivot and you're always having to kind of do these trial and error things to find out like, okay, well then what is gonna work this time? Because
Yeah,
it's
right.
just always changing. So it makes sense that those are things that you're struggling with. But again, you are absolutely not alone. Even myself, I struggle with a lot of these things as well. So
Okay, good. Good to know.
sweet. All right, guys. Well, if you are looking to get your free one-on-one podcasting coaching call, you can become a member of our private membership community, the Soulcial Suite. All the information that you need is down in the show notes. Megan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we got to reconnect.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me again.